Our parsha begins, and in fact the book of Vayikrah, Vayikrah el Moshe, that God called to Moshe. He summoned him. And Rashi explains that this is a phrase of affection. Hashem affectionately called out to Moshe to teach him the Torah. And in fact, not just in this instance, but every single instance that Hashem was about to teach Moshe a particular law, a particular passage of the Torah, Vayikra el Moshe, he would call out to Moshe. Moshe would come, in this instance, he came into the Ohel Moed, he came into the tent of meeting, into the tabernacle. And Rashi goes on to explain that this happened every single time that Hashem was about to teach Moshe. And then he says, did Hashem also call Moshe when there were hafsakot, when there were breaks? Because we see that the Torah is designed in such a way that there is a paragraph and then there's a break, and then there's a paragraph and then there's a break. Did he only call to him at the beginning of the paragraphs or even for the break? And Rashi says no, he only called him for the beginning of the paragraph, but not for the break. If so, says Rashi, what was the point of the break? Why are there breaks? Why are there pauses between the paragraphs? Why is it that the Torah isn't just one long book that has no breaks, but instead it has to be written, and it's very, very important, and if it's not written this way, it's not kosher. It's very important that a Sefer Torah has these pauses. What is the purpose of that? So Rashi explains the pauses were to give Moshe the opportunity to think about what he had just learned. He had to contemplate it. He had to understand it. He had to take it into himself. He had to internalize it. Now Rashi says we can work out the following principle for ourselves. If this is true of Moshe, then it is certainly true of the average person. Why? Because Moshe had the greatest teacher possible. He had Hashem himself. There could be no greater teacher who could give you the message with such clarity and precision. So he had the greatest teacher. He himself was the greatest student. Moshe was the most humble person. He was the wisest person who ever lived, perhaps only compared to Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon. So you had the greatest teacher, and you had the greatest pupil, and Hashem was teaching him, and nevertheless, there had to be these periods of pauses, of contemplation. So if that is true of Moshe, says Rashi, that is certainly true of us. We're just average people, and the people who are teaching us are human beings. They're not Hashem. They don't always get it right. So certainly we, when we are taught a subject in Torah, there has to be a pause. We have to think about it. And of course, this is something that is so vital in our generation, in our era. Because the way that people are taught today is that the information is just thrown at you. There is so much information. We go onto the internet, there's just tons of information. And throughout the day, we are getting WhatsApps, and we're getting emails, and we're getting Twitter messages, and we're getting posts on Facebook, and we're at school, and we're at work, and it's just, everything is thrown on us, and there's no time to think. But it's those times of contemplation that really turn us into wise people. It's not just learning the lesson. You know, the first time that you learn anything is pointless. We used to say in yeshiva that you could only ever say that you had learned something if you had done it at least 4 times. Why was this true? Because the first time that you learned anything, basically you didn't learn it at all. So the first time was nothing. The second time, therefore, was really the first time. The third time was the first revision, and the fourth time was the second revision. And only after at least 4 times could you really say you had a grip on the topic, especially as something as difficult as Torah study. And therefore we would do well to learn this lesson, that Hashem called to Moshe to teach him the subject, but then he let him pause to think about it. And I imagine that sometimes those pauses were longer than other times. We have to take what we've learned, we have to internalize it, we have to think about it, we have to let it become part of us, and not just take the information at first glance and at face value. I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom.